the Department of Planning and Development. I'm also accompanied by Graham Owen, who is also with the Department of Planning and Development, as well as the applicants, Cornerstones. And then I'd also like to thank Poonam for joining, who's from the Sully Supervisor District Office. Just want to thank you all for joining us tonight to discuss the Cornerstones Plan Amendment. This is just the agenda that we're going to go over tonight. We're going to kind of go over the existing conditions, what the site is, what it looks like, what the board authorized staff to consider, and then I'm going to pass it over to the applicants to present the Cornerstones Plan Amendment that they're proposing. And then I'm also going to summarize questions and comments that we received from previous outreach and community engagement, and then go into staff considerations that have led to the staff plan text recommendations, and then the timeline for this plan amendment. Just to kind of set the stage, this is the location. This plan amendment encompasses 2 parcels within the Sully Supervisor District, and it's located northwest of the interchange of Route 50 and West Ox Road. So this is a 1.12 acre property, which is currently undeveloped. And parcel 8, labeled up there, is under conservation easement. So all of the development will be occurring on parcel 9B. And then this is kind of just providing kind of some existing conditions of what the site currently looks like from a street level view. So as you can see, the site is completely vegetated from all sides. And the bottom left image is the budding medical office building. And then the bottom right image is from the budding medical office building parking lot. And this is where the proposed entrance to the site will be located. So it's off that Washington Corporation Drive that's right there. And then kind of just zooming out and seeing what's around, what amenities and surrounding area looks like. It is about half a mile away from the Harris Teeter Shopping Center. And then it's 0.6 miles away from the Fairfax Town Center. And then there's also the fire station and police department that is also nearby. And then, so the board authorized this plan amendment on February 22nd of 2022 on land that is owned by the Redevelopment and Housing Authority of Fairfax County. The board asked staff to consider affordable housing at a density of up to 35 dwelling units per acre as an alternative use on the property. And given the location, a noise impact study was going to be a key component of the review, which the applicants have submitted already. And then just going over the current adopted comprehensive plan text for this site, which is located within the Fairfax Center area, specifically land unit C2, which is highlighted there in light blue. So the adopted text is with the baseline option of residential use at 2 dwelling units per acre, with an overlay option of office use up to 0.25 floor area ratio. And so now I'm going to pass it off to the applicants to go over the proposed plan amendment.
Hi, I guess I'll start. I'm Carrie Wilson, the Chief Executive Officer of Cornerstones, and we're really happy to be here tonight. And thank you all for joining us to learn more about the project. Just a little bit for folks that may not know Cornerstones, but we have been working in Fairfax County for more than 50 years. We're an organization that has provided services, everything from, we are an affordable housing developer, also provide shelter and many wraparound services that help people remain stable and in their housing and in their lives. One of the things that as we think about coming into this property, we have a strong base of community support. We are really fortunate to be supported both by people who come in to help with our mission. Before COVID, nearly 6,000 volunteers. We work with many faith groups across Fairfax County and corporate partners, and these are some, as well as nonprofit partners who we will lean on and call on to help us in this project as we move forward. The next slide really speaks to sort of what we want to do and the importance of permanent supportive housing in Fairfax County. My colleagues who are with me tonight, Maura Williams is our Vice President for Housing and Community Development. She oversees all of our shelter, but also all of our supportive housing programs, and she'll be available to answer questions later. But I would state that, just as you can see here, the need for supportive housing has been really well documented in Fairfax County. It has been a priority for the Board of Supervisors to provide what we call permanent supportive housing, which is, affordable, really permanent housing with services for people that include seniors, people who have medically vulnerable, and who have disabilities and who have faced chronic homelessness. And the benefits of this program, as you'll hear from our developer partner, Paul Brown, in just a minute, is really, it's a solution. It's giving people a home and the dignity of that for the first time. One thing I will say about Cornerstones, and it has come up in some of the questions, is not only do we have our track record of working in the community for many, many years, but we have earned a quality endorsement in supportive housing from the National Corporation for Supportive Housing. So this is an endorsement that is given to groups who meet the conditions for running well-run properties. So just a little bit about what we do, and I will turn it over to Paul Brown with Joseph Brown Development, who is our developer partner on this project, to tell you a little bit more.
Thank you, Carrie. Good evening. A little bit about the project which really kicked this off, as you'll hear later and throughout. This is a proposed development on county-owned land that requires that the comprehensive plan be amended to allow the use, and then ultimately would require a rezoning as well. And what we're here to talk about tonight is, of course, the comprehensive plan amendment, which is the first step. It's a crucial step, but it is the first step. So the proposal that was submitted by Cornerstones to get this started is for a single building of 34, perhaps 34, 33 or 34 apartments, up to a maximum of 34 small one-bedroom apartments in a single three-story structure that you see here in the dark gray. This was our initial concept of a single building, pulled back from the interchange of West Ox and Route 50, with a nice buffered area behind the building for landscaping. The project, or this concept, is truly conceptual. It is our first iteration. We've already received comments from planning staff, but those are not incorporated here. If you could move on, Leah, perhaps to the next slide. This is a view of what the building would look like. And this is also conceptual, but it is intended to give you an idea of two important things. Number one is that this is going to be an architecturally attractive and high quality building with high quality finishes and design, with outdoor space both for the units themselves. Each would have a patio or a balcony, as well as outdoor gathering space on the rear of the building, sheltered from Route 50, so that the residents would have a place to gather and enjoy nice weather or a meal together outside. You'll see there's a big glassed area on the ground floor, and that is a community room. There will be large, ample community spaces for this building. Maybe the next slide, please. And then the sort of details, the data. Again, it's proposed 33 units. It's been up to 34 as we try to tweak and figure out how to best use the space. But right now we're proposing 33 residential units. And this says designed primarily for one-person households. They will be, at latest count, 410 square feet units, which is a quite small one-bedroom unit. It will include full kitchen, bathroom, and be designed for permanent occupancy. These residents will all have 1-year leases and will call these places their home, perhaps forever. It is not a shelter or temporary housing. It is intended to be permanent. In addition to these small but commodious units, we'll also have gracious common spaces that will allow for management as well as service provision. And that service provision is really what makes this Cornerstone proposal unique. What Cornerstones is proposing is that this property would have on-site 24/7 staffing. During the day, that person would likely help the residents achieve self-sufficiency or achieve the services they need, access those services, like social work, frankly. In the evening, it would more likely be a desk attendant available for the residents or neighbors if there's an urgent need. During the day, there would be regular care management and case management for these residents. As Carrie mentioned, these folks are folks who likely would not have a place to live otherwise and need additional supports. And Cornerstones, as demonstrated through that quality assurance, that certification, is expert at that. And so working with the county agencies and other nonprofit agencies, they would bring in the services or help the residents get to other places to access the services they need to thrive. And that's the end of that slide. Lynn, I'm going to pick this up. Normally we have Lynn describe
Tom?
what the, yep.
Do you want me to describe it?
I'll do it just because I'm on a roll here.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Currently, the property is zoned, it has a dual zoning, C8 and R1, but as I mentioned before, we have to do this comprehensive plan amendment, and then we would do a rezoning to follow. That has been submitted, but it is following behind while we work through some issues on our side. So I'm sorry to cut you off, Lynn, but I wanted to keep rolling.
That's okay.
So,
Quite fine.
so that is the proposal.
Great. Thank you all. And as Paul was saying, that this is for the plan amendment, and the rezoning is going to follow coming later. But this is for the plan amendment. So kind of summing up what the plan amendment is analyzing, as stated before, the adopted plan text is for residential use at 2 dwelling units per acre, with that overlay option of office use up to 0.25 floor area ratio. And then we're looking at the proposed plan, which is affordable housing at 35 dwelling units per acre, analyzing those 33 units that Paul and Carrie were talking about. And so up to this moment, there have been 4 public community outreach meetings for this plan amendment. We went to Sully District Council twice. We did a community meeting back in January 22nd. And then we went to the Springfield Land Use Committee last week. And so now we're doing this second overall larger community meeting. And so so the next couple of slides are just going to go over the kind of the compiled comments and questions that we received. And so, I'll just go ahead and go through them all because they might help with answer some questions that you all may have now. So number 1, will those who live here be rotating or permanently living here? These apartments are designed to provide long-term affordable living. So the future tenants will be signing a lease and paying rent for as long as that they wish to live here. Question 2, will those living here have a job, and how will they get around for transportation? Some of the tenants will have a job and then some won't. But with the support of services, there will be assistance with job skills and finding job locations. And Cornerstones will also be arranging for transportation or metro access, since it's expected that few or not all of the tenants living here will own a car. And then there's also a nearby public transit station or public bus that's a block away. And so number 3, clarification on who this will be serving. So this is permanent supportive housing, and it is intended to assist those who need a house. as well as those supportive services. So the residents can range from older adults, persons with disabilities, those experiencing homelessness, those recovering from substance abuse, and those who need on-site health services. So again, each resident will have a signed lease agreement and they'll pay rent to live there, and the services will be provided based on really what's needed by the residents. Number 4, does this program apply to low income? This is intended to provide housing options to those with extremely low income, so yes. Number 5, will families or individuals be living here? These units, as Paul was alluding to, they are 1-bedroom units of approximately 450 square feet. So that does limit the amount of people who will be, comfortably be able to live in one space. But as stated, fair housing laws say that they can't discriminate on the amount of people who will actually be living in the apartment. Number 6, is this Section 8 housing? This is permanent supportive housing, so it's affordable housing with that on-site supportive services, and this will be privately owned and professionally maintained, since there'll be that 24/7 hour service. Number 7, what specific services will be provided? So, there's going to be that 24/7 on-site tenant and guest monitoring with the on-site social workers, public health services, substance abuse counseling, and then the general resident services as well. And just, providing access to county services as tenants requested. Is there a curfew for the residents? No, there isn't a curfew. This is an apartment building, so the tenants, will sign a lease. They need to comply with it. They're going to be paying rent, just like other rental communities. However, there is going to be that 24/7 on-site support given, and guests will be required to sign in and out. And then number 9, what is the application screening process for the residents? So the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, guidelines does inform the screening practices and has, tenant interviews, and then there's going to be background checks for felony convictions of major crimes. And so the permanent supportive housing does adhere to the principles of housing first. And so they have guidelines that they go through. And so number 10, what's the crime rate associated with this use? So in Fairfax County and nationally, this housing model has not seen to have any type of effect on the crime rates within the area. And so this particularly goes into because this housing provides individuals with stability in a supportive setting, and the site is well monitored with that 24/7 on-site support. And then question 11, why is this location being picked instead of other locations? And so it's really because this land is owned by the county. And so within that housing element of the policy plan, within the comprehensive plan, it prioritizes the use of county-owned land for development of affordable housing. And so that's kind of one of the main reasons why this location was being picked. But this site also does have access to public transportation and nearby grocery amenities and medical support. Number 12, how many people are unhoused in Fairfax County? And is this only meant to serve those who are unhoused within Fairfax County? So individuals living here would be from Fairfax County. And just to reiterate that this is not a shelter, this is affordable supportive housing. And so Fairfax County has documented the need for 275 additional units designed, such as this, to meet the housing needs of future tenants. And then the next one goes into, are there sites that are similar to this, similar to permanent supportive housing? And is there data to see how successful they are and the impacts? And then providing examples. And so within Fairfax County, there are a total of 652 current units with projects that have similar goals as this. So serving people who have been homeless, and then ranging, for those who are elder and those. And so with the additional units, and then there are also additional units that are managed by Fairfax County for people with serious mental illness, developmental and intellectual disabilities who are eligible for certain types of special housing waivers and services. But to get to the bottom line, there's still that need for an additional 275 units, and Cornerstones is proposing 33 units for this site. And then the next one, this shows a map where the dedicated permanent supportive housing locations are within Fairfax County. So there are similar sites, such as the one that's being proposed tonight, kind of scattered in Fairfax County. So majority of the permanent supportive housing is operated through scattered sites. So that means that it's not a single site location, such as the one that you're seeing tonight. They're kind of embedded in other apartments in the private market. But this site indicates the ones that are dedicated to permanent supportive housing, so that single site location. So the green flags indicate the current permanent supportive housing locations, and then the red indicates the ones that are upcoming sites. And then the star is the proposed Cornerstones development, where that's being proposed. And so, just again, this is permanent supportive housing. And so it is a true home. It's not a shelter. Residents do have to pay rent, and there are those on-site supportive services. And then last slide. So or at least for the comments and questions that we received. So number 14, how high is the building going to be? The building height will be 34 feet, and then the building size will be approximately 27,000 square feet. 15, are there old Berry gas tanks on the site? Since the site way back then used to have an auto shop on there. So there were gas tanks, but they have been removed and the soil has been remediated. And then overall, there were concerns over the site constraints and how this new type of housing that is being built within Fairfax County. So, concerns with the concept being brought into the neighborhood. So kind of just to, reiterate that there is that need for supportive housing is well documented in the county strategic plan and in a variety of different housing types needed to really ensure that quality of life and opportunity for all residents of Fairfax County. So Fairfax County has identified the use of publicly owned land and advertised appropriate parcels that will have to meet the conditions within the county zoning and planning regulations. So, they're going to go through this comprehensive plan amendment, but they still need to go through the rezoning and the process and the hearings for that. Which gets into the next question. When will this be taken into vote? So the Board of Supervisors will be voting on, it'll go to the Planning Commission and then the Board of Supervisors will be voting on this. But just to reiterate that this is the first stage which is going through the comprehensive plan amendment. And then it needs to also go through that rezoning process. So this isn't your last time to comment on this project. And then 18, kind of getting to when this building will, be built and maybe ready to be occupied. It's approximately, it's anticipating for 2 to 3 years for the building to be ready and occupied, but that really just depends on, how timing is for everything else. And then 19, there were concerns of the safety and the noise due to the location of the site. And staff we have the same concerns and we're hoping to address those through the staff plan text recommendations for the comprehensive plan amendment, which I will go over shortly. But kind of going over on the considerations, the staff considerations. So the proposed plan amendment does address key components of the policy plan and the Fairfax County strategic plan by providing affordable housing, especially permanent supportive housing, which will help to address housing for those with all income levels, as well as providing assistance to ensure all residents can prosper. But however, in order to given this site location and the size of the site, a lot of our considerations went into trying to ensure residential suitability and safety. So staff examined, these following considerations. And so the noise study was completed, and it did indicate that the site does meet the county policy for the noise levels. And the further details will be examined during the rezoning stage. But a noise study was completed and it does meet the county policy. And so given this location at the intersection of Route 50 and that West Ox Road ramp, buffers and tree preservation will play an important role in order to provide that privacy and safety for the residents, as well as that added noise mitigation. And so kind of looking at improved pedestrian circulation connectivity in order to connect residents to those nearby amenities and services that I alluded to on the other pages, being close to the Harris Teeter, the Fairfax Town area, and then there's some buses that are located along Route 50. So being able to kind of link everything together, especially by foot and biking, and then creating also a safe pedestrian system crossing along Washington Corporation Drive, which is that road to the north of the site, which will help to provide access to an existing trail that is next to the budding medical office, which is on the other side of Washington Corporation Drive, directly abutting the site here. And that trail goes north along the West Ox Road, which also provides a pedestrian-friendly connection to those nearby amenities and services. And the Department of Transportation, they did do an assessment on the pedestrian level of comfort along Route 50. And it was assessed that pedestrians would feel, somewhat comfortable, but mainly uncomfortable due to the missing crosswalks and a series of disconnected sidewalks. And so there's also looking at development of usable open space on the site in order, as landscape plazas, courtyards, was also a consideration in order to create that sense of residential place, that sense of it, and on-site recreational space for the residents. And then one of the last considerations was considering the view shed along Route 50 was also consideration, and why tree preservation and buffers and vegetation was going to be an important aspect to the plan amendment for both the residents and for the nearby communities. And so now we're going into, so with all of those considerations in mind, these are the following staff recommendations that are proposed for this plan amendment in order to, to kind of have that option of affordable housing up to that 35 dwelling units per acre with the on-site supportive services. So as previously stated, residential suitability and safety was one of the biggest concerns, which led to these recommendations in order to provide that residential quality of life and safety given this location and the size. So the plans that you saw on the previous slide that Paul went over, that was what was originally submitted, but, that may change given comments that have been received. And so while they go through the rezoning stage, development may, the layout might change. So we wanted to create some flexibility here in the language, kind of emphasizing, creating language that looks at the building orientation and site design as a mechanism to reduce the noise from the road, which could also enhance pedestrian safety and privacy. And then there's also language to provide screening, and especially in the form of fencing and berms, should be considered to provide that physical separation between the site and the ramp, and the site and the West Ox Road ramp and Route 50, to really emphasize that safety and privacy aspect. And then tree, and then other ones such as tree preservation, enhancement of buffers, again, should be strongly encouraged to maintain that landscape view shed along West Ox Road and Route 50, and provide a treed environment for the future residents. So, heavy language on tree preservation, buffers, vegetation, fencing, as well as enhanced landscaping along the northern side since it abuts that medical office building. And then we were also adding language about kind of creating flexibility for that reduced parking. So that's where the parking demand study comes into play. So this was put in here because we're hoping that this can provide opportunities for, since not all the residents or the tenants will be having a car, we're hoping that the demand, will be able to match what is needed for this site. So we're hoping that this will then provide opportunities for additional tree preservation, landscaping, or usable open space, or create like more of a setback from the interchange, to help provide future residents with kind of a more pleasant living environment, and more buffers between the street and the site. And then also looking at outdoor amenities, such as plaza, courtyard, or other usable space for residents to really enhance that residential nature, and provide on-site recreational use. And then the last slide, the last recommendation here, here we put the transportation recommendations for all of Land Unit C. So this is in Land Unit C2. But we are suggesting that we put the transportation for both Land Unit C1 and Land Unit C2, so that any new development that does come in, they'll have to assess and contribute to enhancing the multimodal infrastructure around this area, and not just the Cornerstones development. And so Graham and I, we did walk along Route 50 to get to that Harris Teeter. And, we noticed that there were missing crosswalks and sidewalks, and crossing signals, which did make it feel unsafe and uncomfortable to walk along this corridor, and cross these large intersections, especially since the cars go kind of fast along Route 50. And so the sections highlighted in red were where the missing crosswalks and pedestrian signals were. However, we have been told recently that those enhancements have been created. So now there are crosswalks and the pedestrian signals for where those red are highlighted, which is great. So there is that safer and more, and then there is residents, tenants can also go up north along the Fair Ridge Drive, which is also a safer and more comfortable path for pedestrians to access these amenities. But we really wanted to focus on creating a more enhanced multimodal system throughout Land Unit C. And so here we're kind of just going through the timeline now. So a staff report for this plan amendment was published April 3rd. And so we did go to the Springfield Land Use Committee last week. We're going to you all tonight. And then we are planning to go to Planning Commission for public hearing May 1st. And then Board of Supervisors June 11th. And again, this is just for the comprehensive plan amendment. This is not the rezoning schedule. That hasn't, that will come later. And so that concludes kind of the long presentation here. Here's my contact information if you do have questions and comments that we don't get to tonight or that you think of later on. So please go ahead and email me those. I also did put contact information for the Redevelopment and Housing Authority in case there are people who are looking for other affordable housing options within Fairfax County. So with all of that, I'd like to open it up now to questions and comments that you have for myself or for the applicants. And this will be, this is being recorded and the PowerPoint will be posted online along with the recording. So just wanted to reiterate that. Okay, so I see one hand raised, Kathleen.
Hi, yes, I had a question. When you talked about that background checks will be done, I was confused. Does that mean like if somebody does have a felony conviction, they will be excluded from living in the facility, or is it just a background check to uncover the criminal history, if there is any?
Carrie, do you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
So, well, there are standards, and I'm not an expert on property management, but there are felonies and there are different felonies. So it could be that some felonies would in effect disqualify a resident for living there. But I can't say that any felony would automatically disqualify a person. So that's all I
Okay.
could say at this point.
Okay, and my last question was when you said on point number 10 that these sites don't impact crime rates, can you identify the source of that statement, with that statement?
See, Carrie, do you have that
Here,
background information?
yeah, just generally, as a national model for this, they do not find, in fact, permanent supportive housing actually improves the conditions. We're getting people who might otherwise be on the street, giving them stability, and so they are not. We are not seeing these kinds of crime rates, and I think that's why. That is one of the benefits of taking this housing and being able to have folks in the lease. We have the on-site services, and I think that's why we really, Cornerstones has been working in the community. We have over 150 units ourselves, and in scattered site and neighborhoods. So it's something that we take seriously, both protecting the residents and providing support to them, but also assuring that we have a well-managed property. And I believe the source that Leah mentioned, that the police and fire station in the Springfield and Sully district were consulted and said they hadn't seen crime. There was a shelter in the area, but not permanent supportive housing, but they have not seen issues with crime.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Next is Brian.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Brian Funaki, and I have lived in the Sully District, 22033 zip code, for the last 30 years. My wife and I have raised our 4 kids in this area, who all went through the Fairfax County public school system, and each graduated from Virginia or DC universities. And while I know this complex is aimed at mostly very low income, I think my comments not only apply for this, but others that might not just be 30% of the average, I think is what was said in the briefing earlier, but 50, 70%. So I'm really talking about this applying to this project, but also the average person. I think most of us agree that buying a home in this area is very much out of reach for the average person, unless you have wealth. So I'm very much in support of partnerships like this, where developers and advocacy groups, local government, work together to help make sensible decisions about housing to help the wider community. Also sort of here in a way to speak on behalf of my kids and those like them who are now young professionals, but really have no hope of being a homeowner in this area. I have a daughter currently living in Pennsylvania, in part because of the cost of living. One of my sons is currently training to be a firefighter, but at that salary, he has no real good chances of affording a home in this area. And I think all service providers like police, fire, and teachers should be able to afford to live here, as well as all the other service industries that provide so much of the necessary services to us, things that we need and take for granted. These are important members of our community, and if someone works here and provides services here, they should be able to live here. And again, I know this project specifically is very low income, but there are a lot of other affordable housing projects out there that will kind of reach out and tailor to maybe the average person as well. Finally, I recently retired from the Department of Veterans Affairs after 35 years of service. And as many of you know, the VA provides medical care, benefits, and burial for veterans and family members. But for the last 10 years or so, one of the highest priorities of VA has been eliminating veterans' homelessness. And one of the ways VA is doing this is through public-private partnerships, not unlike what is proposed here. I've been working at homeless shelters and hypothermia prevention shelters for the last 20 years. And from experience, I know many at these shelters are homeless veterans. More affordable housing and innovative partnerships in Fairfax across the region would be a way to get people back on their feet and have a chance in life. That's, in some levels, that's what we're doing, giving people dignity and have a chance at life. And what struck me during the presentation is this project, a lot of it is going to be aimed at people with disabilities, those chronic homelessness, who are trying to make it in society, and those with special medical conditions. That would likely include, I'm sure, elderly and veterans as well. So in summary, I just want to say, I think, when we look out for everyone in the community like this does, it makes us a more representative community and hopefully a more meaningful one. Lastly, thank you to Leah and all others, Sully Supervisor Kathy Smith, as well as all the other county supervisors. Thank you for allowing me to offer my comments, and I'd like to submit my comments in writing as well, if possible. Thank you.
Sure, yeah, you can submit the comments to my email there on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next is E from Fair Ridge.
Hi, this is Eric Papula. I live over in Fair Ridge, across Route 50. I understand the plight that we have for affordable housing in the county, and it's great that people are trying to address that. This location, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
This location is just a terrible location. As somebody that lives across the street, and you literally could not pay me to cross 50 during rush hour. We've had so many accidents. We've had our bus station, our bus structure demolished, I believe, twice, demolished once and hit a second time. It's like playing Frogger trying to cross that intersection. You have people speeding by. There were a couple members of this community that were over at the police station a couple weeks ago, and they're not exactly thrilled with the location of this facility. It's a little spit of land next to an off-ramp, next to a highway where people routinely, for everybody that lives around here, can hear the cars speeding day and night. They're not going, 45, 50 miles an hour. We have people street racing at night during the daytime. It's a terrible location. And so that's just my comment on the physical location. But Carrie, I have a question for you. You keep citing national statistics for crime in these areas for very low income housing. What about Fairfax County? Because the police officers that myself and another community member spoke to, they have a very high call rate to some of these neighborhoods within the Reston and Herndon area. Yeah, so I'm more concerned not about national statistics, but Fairfax County statistics.
Yeah.
And
we-
the other,
yeah.
I'll just do my last question, and you guys can address it. The Virginia Fair Housing Law that you noted a while ago, these are 400-something square foot units. You can't restrict the number of people living in there. So we understand how many units that will be there, but you can't pinpoint the number of actual residents that will be living there. And of the residents who will be living there, the ones that especially concern me, it's great that they're making strides to, go towards sobriety, but this is also within walking distance of an ABC store. That sort of scares me. There's also an ice cream parlor across the street where during the summertime, there's routinely 100, 200 family members out there. And it's the substance abuse people that are suffering with that concern me as well. But the idea of this location is not the best. The general idea of providing like a location like this within the county is great. I just don't think this is the location. But those are my questions. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you so much. And I didn't mean to jump in. I will invite Paul and Maura to add just to what I'll say. Leah mentioned that there are 652 right now permanent supportive housing units throughout Fairfax County. And again, all of those have demonstrated a benefit for getting folks, off the street into places where we can provide services for those that, are chronically homeless. But this is also a group of senior population, other vulnerable. We did reach out to Fairfax County and to some of the providers to ask about what their experience has been. And again, did not have a lot of documented information. In fact, these programs really, in talking with the residents themselves, have been very successful in areas where, and Maura may be able to comment on this, maybe shelters, and certainly sometimes work if we call the police, if there's medical emergency or, other issues that come up in shelters. But again, this is not a shelter. This is an apartment building that'll have on-site services and management. And Maura, there she is.
Sure, I can jump in and just to comment on the shelter that we operate, the Embry Rucker Community Shelter, the vast majority of 911 calls that are made at Embry Rucker are medical calls. They are not for violent incidents or fights or things like that. It's almost always a medical call. I do want to talk a little bit more in depth about the population that we are serving and just give some more information about the chronically homeless population. I have 20 years of experience operating supportive housing programs, including permanent supportive housing programs that are scattered site, as well as group homes. People who are identified as chronically homeless have been homeless for 1 year and have a disability. This population tends to be older adults, 55 and older. Majority of them. Oh, I'm sorry. I just saw a comment that says people don't live at Embry Rucker. It's a 70-bed shelter, so there are people at Embry Rucker that are staying there for emergency shelter. So this is an older adult population, medically vulnerable, a lot of chronic health conditions. Not everybody has a substance abuse disability. There may be some people, but the vast majority have some medically vulnerable condition, chronic health conditions, high blood pressure, diabetes, COPD. We're also serving people that have intellectual disabilities and other physical disabilities, and some that have mental health disabilities as well. This is the population that is most likely to die on the streets if they are not moved into permanent housing. For many of these folks, they're not going to transition to self-sufficiency or some other type of housing once they move into permanent supportive housing. They're going to transition in place. This is going to be the last place that they live. They may transition to assisted living from this housing. They may transition to hospice if they have a terminal illness. They may transition to the hospital because of their medical condition deteriorates, and from there they may not come home. So the silver lining that we see in this is that for many of these folks, this is going to be the last place that they live, and we're giving them an opportunity to die with dignity in a home of their own, and they're not going to be dying on the streets or spending their last days in emergency shelter. They're going to have a place of their own that is clean and safe and in a great neighborhood with great neighbors and great amenities and great on-site services. And that's that. I think that's all that I wanted to add about this population. It is amazing that the transition that you see with these individuals when they move into housing, it's amazing to see their health improve, their social contacts improve, their connections improve, all because they have had stable housing. It's so much easier to provide services to people when they have an address and a stable place to live. We take services out to people in the community, but they're also very transient when they don't have a place to live. When they have an address, we know where they're at every day. And so we can bring those services to them, and they're more likely to connect and benefit from the services when they have a place to live, a stable place to live.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers the question. Next is Larry from Fair Oaks.
Thank you. Actually, this is Dory.
Okay.
Beginning. I really appreciate projects like this, and I know Cornerstones has a wonderful reputation, so I am not really concerned about the benefit of the program itself. It's a good program. But if we care so much about vulnerable populations, we've chosen a really inappropriate space to put them. That 1 acre of land is difficult to get around. If you put more traffic lights in there, it's going to just jam up the area. We live 2 developments north on West Ox Road, 2 developments north of Route 50. And as someone previously said, drag racing constantly on that road, and we can hear every bit of it, even with that land buffer there. We can hear it all. It's a very noisy, busy space. And it just, honestly, it isn't appropriate for anyone to live on the corner of an interchange. So if we care so much about these people, we should put them where there are facilities for them. The transit center you mentioned is a bus stop. It's not a transit center. The transit center is located at the government center. There's a lot of land at the government center that could be repurposed for this, and they can be closer to government services. And that would be a more appropriate place to put it. Now, as far as the 1 line of trees you intend to keep around that area, cumulatively with all the other development that has been rammed into that area over the last few years, the senior apartment center, the townhouses, the shopping center, all the tree buffers are gone. And now you want to take away the last one, the one that's around the most noisy area of the entire neighborhood. So you lose that tree buffer. A few trees is not going to help. We already have a problem there with noise. And something nobody else has mentioned, which I think the county should consider, is the relocation of the wildlife in that area. I walk from my house to the shopping center. It's a 10-minute walk, and I do it regularly. And we do still see some wildlife in the area. There are deer, there are foxes, there are rabbits. There's a lot of animals who have been pushed out of all the other areas that I just mentioned where you did development and have been pushed onto this tiny little bit of 1 acre of land. And I really feel for them. And I really don't believe that we are putting the wildlife, the noise, or these people who you're considering vulnerable in the best position when we put them into this little corner acre of land off an interchange. So I didn't really have a question. I wanted to say that I agree that this is a wonderful program, but that I feel that this is a very, very bad decision to put it here. And I'm wondering if these meetings and our comments are going to have any impact on the rezoning, or is the rezoning a done deal and you just want to hear what we have to say? So if it's not just a done deal, I hope what I have said will help for reconsideration of the zoning of that area. I just find that it's highly inappropriate. And thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dory. Before we go into the next caller, I'm Graham. I'm with the Department of Planning and Development with the county. So I just wanted to note one thing, that we're doing these community meetings. I think this is I believe our 5th or our 6th community meeting on just the plan amendment. This is just the first step in the redevelopment process. So we have the comprehensive plan would need to change to accommodate this proposal. That's just the first step. There is a concurrent rezoning that's been paused for the time being, to allow for some of these kind of site challenges to be considered, and ideas for how to address them to be raised. So I did want to note that I think on the staff end we've similarly been interested in, concerned about the frontage along the interchange, and so we have included a couple of bullets in our staff recommended plan text that would seek to address that in terms of the buffer, landscape fencing, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to note that we agree that there are challenges here, just by its very location, so to speak. So I would also note that we definitely do take community input seriously. I think Leah had been going through the comment matrix that it contained all the comments that we've received across these various meetings, and so we do look at them and we do consider them, and we use them where we can to inform our staff recommendation. So would also just note this is not the only time to provide comments. There is a public hearing for the Planning Commission and then also for the Board of Supervisors, just for the plan amendment. And then we'll do it all over again for the rezoning with additional community meetings and hearings for the actual rezoning application. So just wanted to put that out there that, you know, there are, you know, I think on some specific points that you raised, there are some things that staff, you know, would agree with. And so we are taking those comments seriously and hope to be able to address them both with the plan text where appropriate and then also with the rezoning application.
Yeah. Next is Lisa.
Hello. My name is Lisa Vaughn, and I'm lucky enough to be a homeowner who lives in Fairwoods, one of the closer communities to this project. My kids go to the school down the street and play freely in our neighborhood. My church is blocks away, and my husband just wrapped up 6 years of being the scout leader and Cub master for a Cub Scout pack that meets in our community. And from my home, I can walk to medical care, a grocery store, and public transportation, and I love living here. I also have had close friends and family members who have faced financial or relationship crises that could have easily ended up in homelessness if they had not had family to lean on. And I'm currently facing rising costs of rent for aging family members in the area who have to continue to work despite health concerns in order to reach their housing needs. So I know that safe and stable and healthy and affordable housing is critical need in our community. I love this neighborhood and community, and don't think that a group of new neighbors living in a brand new building next to the police department and surrounded by the supports of an organization with the reputation of Cornerstones is going to change how wonderful it is. And so just cheering you on in your efforts to support this community. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Next is Sarah.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Casey, and I am here tonight to represent myself and my parents. My parents have lived off of Ox Hill Road for the last 20 years in the Fair Oaks community. I grew up in that house. I went to Navy Elementary, Franklin Middle, and Oakton High School, and moved back to Fairfax County after graduating with a master's degree from Harvard Divinity School when the pandemic started. I am incredibly heartened that this is being discussed. My family and I believe wholeheartedly and give full support to this project as people of faith who have seen this area grow and people who have seen Fairfax County look out for our vulnerable neighbors. We believe this is the next best step for the neighbors we have who are facing homelessness and in need of permanent supportive housing. I'm excited by the possibility that people who would otherwise not have access to the parks, to grocery stores, to the areas that I have been able to call home since I was a child, that folks will be able to have those and have them as dignified neighbors. I appreciate what Lisa said and what Brian said. This is the Fairfax County I want to live in, one that puts people where they need to be and doesn't wash their hands of the vulnerable. I appreciate that this will be permanent supportive housing with people on site to provide these services, with faith organizations nearby who would be delighted to be able to support the people in need. And I just am really grateful for the county considering this. And I hope you know that you have 3 neighbors, my parents still living in Fair Oaks, and I now live across Route 50 in Camden, Fair Lakes, who are supporting this wholeheartedly and can't wait to support in any way that we can. Thank you.
Yeah. Next is MDAB. I see the name is capital MDAB. Can go next. You're muted if you're trying to speak right now. Okay, we can go back to you. Next is Sheila then.
Hi, my name is Sheila Freeman, and I have lived in this area for 35 years. And I have seen the development of this entire area. It used to have a lot of land around, a lot of space around, and there isn't much anymore. I agree very much with Eric and Dory with the fact that the traffic is unbelievable. It's very dangerous. The location is not a good location for anything like this. The traffic is so fast, it's so heavy, and if there are people like that that are going to be placed into an area, into a building like not placed into it, but that will be living in that kind of area, the area is going to be overwhelmed. It's already overwhelmed. And the walking, the areas, it's just crowded. And to put another building into a little area or one acre area, it's just going to make it much more uncomfortable, um, difficult with an area that's overwhelmed already with traffic. The ability to have the landscaping, the trees, everything is basically gone. There just isn't any anymore. There was a lot of land, there was a lot of um, landscaping around years ago, but there isn't anymore. And now you're taking up the last of the space that's across from 50. And that doesn't make any sense to me because there's no, basically, you only have shopping centers to go to. There's no walking area. My question is, how are you selecting the people, or what does it take to select the people to move into an area, to a building like that? Um, how are you selecting them? This is, you've got one bedroom apartments, but how are you selecting? They have to put in an application to go into that kind of building. What do you need to do? I don't think this is a good idea. The land is too small for this kind of thing. To put in another section with cars, with everything, there isn't enough room. And there is no, you don't have the trees, you don't have the location, not the location, the landscaping, whatever. And you've picked an area that you've got two huge streets right there, and you're putting in a little corner another entire building for these units. It's just not the right decision. So I've voiced my opinion, but I also want to know, how do you select these people? What is it that you select? What is it that determines that these people will be in a building like that? So it's not just what you're saying, low income, but it's other things that you've mentioned. So I would like for you to give me a little bit more information. So that's my opinion and that's my question. So thank you very much.
So I will start. This being a typical apartment building, residents will sign leases and they will need to apply to live there. That would include the screening process would include those background checks that were described earlier, as well as verification of their income. This will be affordable housing, so there will be limits on maximum income that residents can have, household income. So it would be, in that respect, like any other affordable apartment. People will need to apply, and it's pretty much first come, first serve for folks to get into the building. Once it's established, there would likely be a waiting list. So I don't know if there's further question or if Mara or Carrie have any follow-up.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to add that Fairfax County has a coordinated process to fill all of their permanent supportive housing units across the county. It's called coordinated entry, and all of the homeless services and affordable housing providers meet on a monthly basis, and they match individuals to permanent supportive housing units. The individuals do complete an assessment process with their service provider, and they're ranked based on their vulnerability. So each month, providers that have vacancies meet with providers that have individuals that need housing, and they're matched to the units based on their vulnerability. So there's actually a list of people in the county that are ranked on vulnerability. And so people may need a 1 bedroom, or they may need a building with an elevator. They may need to live in a particular zip code or neighborhood. So there is a very coordinated matching process that takes place every month. And so some of these units will also go through that matching process to make sure that people are a good fit for the building, for the neighborhood, and also to make sure that we're serving those that are most vulnerable, because those are the individuals that need the housing the most.
Great. I hope that answered your questions, Sheila. Next is Jill.
Yes, thank you so much to Fairfax County staff and Cornerstones and development partners for this excellent presentation. I appreciate it. I'm a 20-year resident of Fairfax County, and I also work in affordable housing I've worked in affordable housing for my whole career. So I'm really thrilled to see that this best practice permanent living solution with supportive services for residents of our homeless shelters. We need more housing option for our unsheltered residents that include these key supports. So I just wanted to register my support. And I want to say, as a partner in a different position that I hold now, I did have the opportunity to participate as an advisor along with Cornerstones in the Northern Virginia Supportive Housing Institute. And I know that Cornerstones had incredible training on the development of this type of permanent living environment for the residents with the key support services. And something that's really important is quality property management. I know Cornerstones to be a great neighbor for the affordable housing that they currently own. And I also know that as a trusted nonprofit and respected community partner, that they're not going to risk their reputation and will ensure that this inclusive, supportive community is a good neighbor as well. I believe that it is completely appropriately sized at 33 units. That's not an overwhelming amount of housing, and it is desperately needed for our county. I've served meals at Embry Rucker Shelter and our North County hypothermia shelter for years as a volunteer, and I'm really tired of seeing the same people in the shelters and really tired of seeing people living in tents in our woods and around our community. And I believe we can create a better life for these residents who deserve these type of supports. So I fully support this type of development and frankly think we need more of it in the county. So thank you.
Leah, could I offer one more comment?
Sure.
Unless anyone else. Yeah, this is Brian.
Nope, I don't see any other hands raised. So you can go ahead until I see anything else.
Yeah, I was going to say for those concerned about safety, I'm with St. John Newman Catholic Church, and we have community service projects where we take our teens and adult parishioners, some are contractors, into affordable housing neighborhoods. And we do projects for families that maybe can't afford to, maybe they're disabled, they can't do them. And these are other affordable housing units and properties in the Fairfax area. And I want to say we have no hesitation taking our teens there. We feel, at least I feel, as safe there as the neighborhood I live in. These are homeowners or those trying to make it that sort of have pride in ownership, and they're trying to be great citizens and trying to contribute to the community. I just wanted to let people know that those who are working hard to get out of homelessness, try to get into affordable housing, they're just like you and I. And I think that projects like this one is for very low income, but there's others that maybe are 50 or 60% of the average median. And so I just wanted to say that I think these are regular citizens who are trying to do their best, and we don't have any concern with the safety. Thank you.
Leah,
Yep,
I
go ahead, Paul.
raised my hand because I saw something in the chat that I thought I neglected to mention during my presentation. I think it's important. So the land is currently owned by the Fairfax, or was owned by Fairfax County, and is now owned by the Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority. The land is proposed to be leased to Cornerstones, and Cornerstones will build the building. That lease will require that Cornerstones operate the building as an affordable community with supportive services, so that the county, through the RHA, will have oversight over this project and an ongoing relationship. That lease is likely to last 99 years, but at the end of that lease, everything would revert back to the county. So just to assure people that there will be an ongoing relationship between the county and this property. Thank you.
Paul. And I'm putting a link in the chat that will take you to the staff report for Cornerstones Plan Amendment, as well as the hearing dates that can be found for this amendment. So I don't think I see any other hands raised at this moment. Again, let me just make sure. Again, Larry from Fair Oaks, although I don't think your name was Larry, but go ahead.
Yeah, it is. It is now.
Oh, okay.
There's two of us here. I have a follow-up question for Paul. Thank you for that information. So there's a lease relationship between the county and Cornerstones. What about their obligation to continue to provide these support services there? Is that part of the lease, or is that a separate contract that they're under?
Sorry, I was muted. The lease doesn't yet exist, but based on my experience with other similar leases, it is expected that I would expect that the obligation to provide those supportive services would be a term of the lease, because that is why it's being proposed, why it was chosen as a potential use for the property. But that lease has not yet been formalized.
So there will be an obligation for them to provide that throughout the 99-year term of the lease, provided that they continue to provide quality service.
That's what I would expect. Yes, that there would be an obligation to continue to provide those services over the term of the lease.
And what would be the contingency should their services be subpar at some point in time?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I suppose the ultimate contingency and the ultimate threat is that the lease might be terminated. But short of that, that would be to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I don't see any other hands raised. Again, my contact information is here, so if you come up with more questions or comments that you'd like to submit, please feel free to email me or call me. Just to reiterate, we're going to go to planning commission meeting first. And that's a public hearing, so more than welcome to also voice your questions and concerns there too. But we have written all of them down, and with that, I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We had a good turnout. So I'd like to thank everyone, and Look forward to working more on this. All right. Anything else, Carrie or Paul or Lynn? Oh, I do see one other hand raised. Kim?
Yeah, explain to me, all the people that are representing Cornerstone, where do they live? Where do they live? And do they live close to that type of facility?
Yeah, this is Graham, the Department of Planning and Development. We don't need to get into a discussion about where people live that are on this call. That's not appropriate.
But they're determining where this is going to be, where I live.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree.
I can say as Brian Funaki that I live in the Sully District zip code. That's just a few miles from this property. And that's why I called in.
And you're a board member for Cornerstone.
That's correct. But I've also, everything, that I've said is also true, that I'm a member of St. John Newman Church, and I've worked with homeless organizations for 20 years. And I've recently joined the board because I retired from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
I also see Catherine has their hand raised.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much. Just wanted to say, I don't think that was an inappropriate question. I think it's very fair. I think the overall idea of this is excellent. Worth pursuing. And I'm glad to see that Cornerstone seems to have a great reputation with this, but I think it's only fair to look at all aspects. I would also voice what other people have said. This is a very difficult area as far as traffic. These people come off these exit ramps at 65, 70 miles an hour. And I have to be careful myself, just trying to merge into traffic. And the drag racing and the screaming cars going up and down these streets at night, all night. It is very valid, but I don't think we should cut off any conversation and be open to anyone's ideas and see what they have to say and what their viewpoint is, because this does impact people who live here and who have lived here 25 plus or 30 years. So, and it's not a matter of people being unwilling to help, but we have to be realistic also. And just a question to you, I'm sorry, just 2 follow-ups. I was going to wait and send them to you, but will do not or cannot pay their rent obligations. And why can there be no enforcement of how many people live in an apartment, in a 1-bedroom apartment? Mm-hmm. Why is that discriminatory?
I think your question the first part of your question may have been cut off. Was it what happens if people do not pay the rent?
Yeah, what happens? What is the recourse if they cannot meet the rent obligation? I mean, these are people, apparently you're trying to put people in here who are in very dire straits, and I'm very sympathetic to that. But if they can't make that obligation, and what can be done to help other people maybe move in who can meet that obligation?
Well, I can't speak for Cornerstones, and perhaps they could.
Sure. There's supportive services that are provided to assist people with paying their rent, helping them gain income. It's not always employment income when you're dealing with individuals who have documented disabilities. They may have SSI, they may have SSDI. We assist them with sometimes connecting them with representative payees who make sure that their bills are paid every month. And some people need additional rental assistance, so we assist them with contacting community resources to help pay their rent. We're in the business of housing people and keeping them housed. And so we're going to do everything possible to help make sure that people are paying their rent every month so that they don't become homeless again.
Correct. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
And what about the idea of being able to not being able to restrict or have conditions on how many people in the units? I have seen this. I grew up in DC. I have seen this turn into absolute nightmares. I have seen buildings absolutely destroyed and torn down from and razed to the ground. And a lot of it was people, too many people living in the apartments and this type of thing. It's unfair to make it, and who are trying, to move forward.
Mhm. In my experience with permanent supportive housing, I haven't seen overcrowding in numerous apartments. Typically for apartments this size, it is one individual that lives there. They can have guests just like people in other apartments can have guests. We are going to have on-site staffing 24/7. So the chances of someone being able to move, or for all of them to be able to move additional people in, it is very slim, because there are services on site to intervene if anything like that is starting to happen.
Okay, that
Yeah, I
sounds good.
think
That sounds
that's
fair.
I think that's generally the case with, the benefit of having housing that is supported, with kind of funding streams and with programs like this. There is a lease. It is a lease violation if you have guests that stay over so long. And I think what a lot of us experience, and certainly in my neighborhood, are private landlords who rent and may allow people off lease. And that's what you're talking about. And this will be a building, again, with the kinds of Paul and Maura described, the the eligibility standards and the application process, and again, being on site with people who we're going to get to know very well in a small building and working with.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. Thank you.
There's a question about the age. Is there an minimum age, or for the residents? And we've expected this would be for all, open to all. Anybody over 18 could lease a unit. We expect, though, based on experience, that many of the people who do apply would be elderly, but it would be for any adults.
We have one more hand raised. Phil?
Hello, hi. Interesting how Brian, Jill, and Sarah forgot to mention their ties to Cornerstone. Also, I agree with it being such a horrible placement for the building. It'll be better suited near the government center, near a metro facility. I will bring up the fact that people drag speed and drag race there all the time. For example, the Penderbrook sign right there in 50 going west has been hit countless of times. I can count most likely like twice a year a car runs into that because they're speeding and probably going close to like 80 or 90 miles an hour on that road. And finally, I would like to mention that that is our final stretch of green space. That's where the animals and the wildlife is at. I would like to leave it untouched. Those are my 2 cents.
Bill, could you tell me about the sign again? Where's the location of the sign that you're describing?
Yeah, so there's a Penderbrook sign when you get off 66 on 50.
Okay.
Right there. Yeah, there's a right there, right across the mall. It's like a Penderbrook signage, and that thing gets hit twice a year easily. If you were to pull up the Fairfax County accident reports, you can pull it up.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'll take a look. I appreciate it. You bring it up. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. I don't see any more hand. Yep. Go ahead, Carrie.
No, I just want to say thank you for the input and the feedback. And as we've said, as we're looking at this and been ourselves walking and driving the neighborhoods, surrounding neighborhoods, continue to take this information that people have shared about living there and those that so we will be looking at that. And I wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight and giving us the chance to just introduce this project to y'all.
Thanks, Carrie. I think those are good closing words. Again, I posted the staff report and the public hearing information in the link there. So this isn't your, last time to comment. So, but please do send me comments, questions, letters of any sorts, and I can forward them to planning commission members and board members. But with that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and expressing everything. And have a great rest of the night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.